So I'm Bhavik. I've been an intern with the Hyak team since autumn quarter. And specifically for this one, we're going to be working on OnDemand, which you probably all already know. So some of the things I want everyone to get before they leave is obviously applying those policies that Kristen just talked about. And then evaluating your use cases for OnDemand features. If it's something that your workflow could benefit from, if it's something that you want to dabble with just to explore, if it's something that you think could come in handy if you just want to modify a few files and just move folders around instead of using SCP or something annoying. Specifically, I'm going to go over the File Explorer, the interactive apps, and job scheduling. And then on top of that, I'm going to talk about custom environments and how to manage dependencies through OnDemand, but really just it's kind of applicable to any case in general. But it is kind of a key feature of OnDemand. In some ways, OnDemand is just a way to interact with the terminal, but it's just GUI based. So the actual platform or software itself is for any HPC cluster. Basically, you take it, you tie it up to your specifics, and it gives you a UI that any user can use. And so we're not the only university with this. Go to basically any that has a nice supercomputer, and they're going to probably be using this as well. So as Kristen said, we're rolling out an in-beta version, and if you're not already there, you can navigate to the link, and it will look like this with the blog posts. So just talking a little bit more about what I was talking about and giving you all a diagram. You can tell that usually what you would be doing is you would be on the HPC node itself. So you would be on a bash, you would be typing your commands directly into there. You'd be ls, cat, whatever. And that's exactly what OnDemand is doing. It's just doing it in batches and with massive scripts. So really you're interacting with exactly the same underlying hardware. So there's no we don't allocate these special clusters for OnDemand. You're using the exact same stuff. So moving away from a terminal is not as incredible as it sounds. It's just easier to do the same thing. A few statistics just to talk about why we have this in the first place. This is for Ohio Supercomputer something group, it might be. They're the ones who kind of created OnDemand. And so you can look at the graph I have up there. The blue line is the OnDemand users, and the dwindling other line is the terminal users. So ever since they pushed it out, people have slowly converted to using it. And one of the cool things about it is that it also has a web-based shell. So basically, even if you wanted to use terminal, you could do it on there, unless you're a power user and you have your aliases and stuff, which I think you could set up here too. And then the two numbers there, it's a bit blurry, but that's 76 hours since the first, your user creation and your first login. And that's 20 hours less than your first login and your first job creation. So people were saving 100 hours as opposed to using the terminal. I don't think this is something we have to talk about. I think you all understand the differences by now. Okay, so I will jump into the File Explorer. Everything you need is in that bar up there. So files, jobs, interactive apps, my sessions, and then clone login. The first thing I want to look at is files. So if you click on that, I don't know if you're going to have as many as I do, but you might just have home directory. So we can go to our home directory. And for comparison, this is exactly the same thing that you would get if you just logged in to a Hyak. So you would ls, and I'm okay, 131, data, desktop. It's the exact same home directory that you get when you SSH onto the cluster. And so within here, one thing I really want to talk about that you might already know is that this home directory has a limited amount of space. I think it's 10 gigabytes if you're not paying. I'm not sure how the paying stuff works.
It's for everyone.
For everyone.
Yep.
Everyone is 10. So do not. The point is, I probably have too many things on here myself. I'm hitting the capacity. But when you work on things, when you create environments, when you move your projects, probably don't keep them here. There's other places to store them. Python files are probably OK. So the first thing I want everyone to do is go to change directory and navigate to somewhere where we can have infinite files. So that would be gscratch and scrubbed. And as the name indicates, if you don't use your files, they will be scrubbed. So if you hit OK, that will take us to gscratch scrubbed. That's the same thing as cd. Here I have a folder for you. If you go to filter and look up copy me, you'll find a folder called copy me. Is everyone there? Cool. And so the very convenient thing about this is, one, I can just like take a folder from my file explorer and just like drop it in here. So if you want to move files onto the Hyak like file system, super easy. If I want to bring this out of the system, I can go here and I can just download it. So super convenient when it comes to like managing your files, and it just like saves. It's like so much easier to just log onto this than to be like, I'm going to go onto the cluster, I'm going to type in my password, I'm going to like verify something, and then I can copy the file, and then I'm going to fail like 10 times copying it as well. So if you want to move things, I would recommend this.
Is everyone able to copy that directory? All good?
I will. Copy, move, this button on the corner. And if you do that, this little pop-up will show up, and it'll tell you if you want to copy or move it. It's a little confusing, so basically go to the place you want to move it and copy it to, and then click copy. So it's not like copying to your clipboard or anything. So what I recommend is click new file. So you're going to make your own directory within the scrubbed folder and call it maybe your NetID or something. So mine would be Soni. I'll call it Soni1. And then if you get rid of that filter and search for what you just made, did I click new file? OK. You'll find what you just created. And so go to there, and then you can click copy. Do not click move, otherwise it'll disappear for everyone. So. Has everyone got that? So you go to copy me, click copy, navigate back and create your own. Actually, you don't have to go back. Just create your own directory and make a copy of copy me in your directory. OK, next, I think that is most of what you'll want to explore at the File Explorer. It's pretty intuitive. It's a lot like Finder or like just any file explorer that you've probably used. It just has like, it's a bit slower sometimes because it's loading so many files. But really, like, think of this as like your file explorer for Hyak. We'll leave this directory here for now. We'll hit clone login to explore like the thing you already know, it seems like, which is the shell. And so unfortunately, you do have to like verify once you enter the terminal. But again, this is the exact same thing as if you SSH'd onto the cluster. It takes a second. And then for all of you that don't know, you can hit Hyak alloc or allocate, and that will show you all your resources, the stuff available to you. This is like probably the best command, especially for OnDemand, because there's like no visualization of this on the actual UI. So if you want to know what you have available, what accounts you're part of, what your partitions are, and who's using what, this is like kind of the only way to get there. OK, so remember I talked about your home directory only having like so much storage. One of the ways to go like fix that is creating a symbolic link. So basically, you have your own directory in Scrub now, which has infinite storage, and you have your home directory. But every time you're on your home directory, you don't want to be like gscratch scrubbed my name, right? What if that was just like something available straight from my home directory? So if you type ln, that's for link, and then go back to where you were and hit copy path in that corner. And then paste that here. So this is the place you want basically your pointer to point to. And you can call it like scrubbed your username. Oh, ln-s. Sorry, s. And now it will work. And then if you list again, I have something called scrubbed Soni. And if you cd into that directory and list, I have copy me. So I navigated to that place without having to go back directories. And now I have infinite storage here too. So your home directory kind of has as much space as you want, as long as you're in here. Yeah, so that's all I want you to do with this for now. We'll move on, but don't close these windows. I will be coming back to this, and we can figure out what's going on and copy me. For now, I really quickly want to talk about one other tab, which is called Interactive Apps. So these are basically apps that we've set up for you. So generally, the workflow for you would look like, let me figure out how to launch Jupyter on this specific socket or this specific port, and then how do I forward that port to my local laptop? And that'll be let me open up two SSH nodes to make the SSH the connection. And that was a pain, and so we've solved it by doing everything for you. So if you go here, you'll see a few parameters. So the account is whatever account you're part of. So if you're part of a research group, you might have that up there. If you're part of nothing, I don't know, you might see nothing. So I'm part of STF, which is a student group, and then I also happen to have U of IT here. And your partition, if you click on it, the very cool thing is it will show you everything that you have available. So you can't accidentally call a partition or try to allocate on something you don't have. And for this, if you want to follow along, we can hit checkpoint. If you have your own resources, you can just use the free resource so that we don't have to wait for something to show up. And finally, you have your containers here. So we have a few preloaded ones. If you think that something would be helpful for someone, just give that to us, and we will put that here. Maybe more convenient for you and other people that you're using a container with. For me, I have my own custom one, but for now, I'll just use Minimal Notebook. And then finally, you have tasks, which is not the most intuitive thing, but it's basically if you have multiple processes running on a script. For example, if you're trying to parallelize sorting or something, and you want I want 3 threads to do the same thing, and your Python script involves that, you'll want to bump your task count up. But if you're just running a single script that does one thing, that runs one process, keep that at 1. And then we have CPUs per task. That's pretty intuitive. How many CPUs do you want in that task? And then we have how much memory do you want with it. I will comment that for some specific apps like MATLAB, you'll want to allocate a bit more than you're expecting. So I would go up a few CPUs to maybe 4 or 5. And then for memory, maybe less than 10. But always just experiment. If it's slow for you, bump it up. But be careful with how much you use, because allocating too much might end up taking a long time to actually get allocated to you. I think if everyone is good here, we can just hit launch, and that should show up. This is your interactive sessions page. So any app that you launch, any app that has launched, will show up here. If you click on the session ID, that will navigate you to its output file. So if you're printing anything from that Jupyter notebook, if you have any errors, that's not here yet, but if you have any errors, that will show up here in your output.log. So things are going good for this log.
One other note is that on your session at the top, you have in the parentheses, there's the number beside Jupyter, and that's your job ID. So when you're writing to us at help at uw.edu to the Hyak team, if you have something specific, it always helps us to include the job ID so that we can go back to the logs that we have available to us as well and see what happened.
Yeah. Okay, while this is queued and everyone's waiting, I'll show you something called Clone Desktop, which is just up here. It's basically, if you've used X11 forwarding with the actual desktop, this is me on the node. So if you want to, if you're I don't want to do whatever, or if I want to launch something that has a GUI without using forwarding, you can just come up over here. In this case, we had Fluent as an example, but it might be easier if we just use MATLAB, so we don't have to type it in. So basically, we store everything as modules on these clusters. That's just quick, and these quickly change your environment so that you can launch different software. So right now, MATLAB doesn't exist on this. If I type that, nothing happens. But if I module load MATLAB, suddenly I can type MATLAB and things happen. So I've just like quickly changed my environment to get the stuff I want. And it will launch, which is super cool. And so we have MATLAB set up for you already right here with just the GUI. But if you want like Fluent, like another app from ANSYS, or if there's like any other GUI-based thing that you would want to launch that we don't have available for you, launching that desktop and then going through the terminal here is the best way to do it. Unless you like forwarding, that could work as well. Cool, so I have my home directory. So everything mounts the exact same. It's basically like using the app on my own laptop. And then hopefully by now, everyone, I should just use something I have. Is everyone like, has their job started yet? Yes, okay. I will get mine to start. See, I messed up because I did not check what was available. Okay, just to keep moving while we wait for this, I want to talk about exiting interactive sessions. So you'll feel like you want to click the delete button here. But before you do that, that's just going to end the cluster, like whatever it's running on and the task it's running on. So some apps like Jupyter or Rstudio are going to have like a save button somewhere, or they might have a power button in the corner. Hit that power button first before just like killing the task. If you don't, then you get like session errors. You might not save something you wanted to save, and you might have some environment issues next time you launch it. Cool. So I'm up. If you hit connect to Jupyter, it's crazy. Jupyter is now up. So very convenient. For me, this is, again, you're in your home directory, and this is all the things that you might be wanting using. Again, the really cool thing is that we've already set up scrubbed dash your NetID. And so like, notice how I can't actually go further back than this. Like I couldn't navigate to gscratch very conveniently and then go to scrubbed. But since I have a symbolic link, I can just like click on this, and now I have access to the things that I wouldn't have access to before. And maybe there is a way, but
we are working on that.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that the root directory doesn't become everyone's home directory, and that you will be able to navigate all the way back to the root of the file system directory tree. But that's coming. So just for now, please use symbolic links to make quick hops to different parts of the file system. So, thank you.
Nice. And yeah, you're on Jupyter, so that's you using an interactive app really quickly. If you are using Jupyter, this is convenient. Who here uses Jupyter? Cool. 2, 3.
Nam does.
Nam uses Jupyter too. That's right. But again, this is like, I have Jupyter as an example, but basically anything can work on this. So if there's a software you want that you forward all the time, we can just pull it up for you and make it really convenient for like you and everyone else who uses the software. And then there's this host button too, if you want to like launch into that specific host with a terminal. So if you're used to that, this is also there for you. And you don't have to log in this time.
And that can be really nice too if you're running a GPU, for example, and so you're working in one window on your Jupyter notebook, and you've launched your script and it's running through whatever your GPU training is happening, then you can open here and do NVIDIA SMI and be able to see what processes are running at that in the bottom part of the table, just to have confirmation that what you have launched is working.
Okay. Yeah, best practices for these apps. These are good for developing code and visualizing results. If you want a long-running production job, or if you want something that recurs, like every week I want to run this script, this is probably not the best for you. And again, the interactive desktop, or the IDEs work a little better than the interactive desktop. They're less resource intensive. They'll probably be a bit faster for you as well. Next, I want to talk about the job composer. So if we go back to our tabs, at the top, we have jobs and then job composer. If you hit active jobs, it should show up with all the stuff that you have right now. If you hit job composer, we'll come to a new tab where you can compose jobs. So basically, the way all the Jupyter stuff works is just a job. Like, we have a fancy script that you could make yourself that we use to run those. And so if you wanted to make your own, you can do it through here. So this is where you do your recurring tasks, where your intensive tasks, the ones that maybe take a day or two to run. We have a few example jobs set up for you with a few templates. And so basically the way this works is you have, if you're not familiar with it, you have a job script. And that's basically the root or where your process starts. It will go through it and it will just do exactly what you tell it to do. A really convenient thing about this is also that it has a built-in editor, which you might have seen before. But if you hit Open Editor, I can make changes to this file like instantly. And I can save that and I can just push out a job. For this, I want to hit New Job and then from a specified path. So basically, you can either create a template and make stuff happen here, or you can say, I already have a place where I have something ready for a job, or where I have a job script, where I have all my files and all the things I have for like all my training data or something, and I can just say, this is where I want the job to start off. In this case, for us, it will be that scrub file, copy me. Why is it gone? Cool. So copy me and then copy path. And we can paste that. I have so many things open. I'll save everyone. We can paste that here. And if we look inside copy me, actually, we don't even have to because it will show up. We can call it like tutorial. And within it, I have that call the like root script called run parallel.slurm. So I'll paste that in here and hit save. Okay, so we can see that like all the contents of that file are here now. And before we run this, when I was typing this up, I introduced a bug so we can fix it together. We can hit edit, and then I have something called module load Python, which doesn't make any sense. So if you want to delete that before you run it, hit delete, save, and then hit the back button. And you'll see that that line is now gone. Actually, I doubt this will work. This should also say Python 3. And then it will be good. There's 2 bugs.
There might be one other bug.
Another bug.
Well, just
bug
that. So people that have a compute partition, it'll always default to the first account that you were added to.
Okay.
But there's something with our defaults that it doesn't always default to compute, and it will. So you might want to add also sbatch partition. Can you show an example?
Yes.
Maybe go in there and add another sbatch directive for partition at the top. Yep, just like this.
Whoa, that's not a partition. GPU. Okay, I guess if you have a weird setup, if you do click run, it will give you the error right there. So bugs are pretty easy to fix.
Yeah.
But I guess
and you can always default to doing partition checkpoint.
Yeah.
CKPT. That should work.
Cool. Yeah, and if you think you're ready, you can hit submit. If things don't work, it will tell you, and you can fix whatever's left. And again, this will queue exactly like we saw the interactive apps queue, and it will complete the same way we saw those complete. And the cool thing about this is that all the output won't end up in your scrubbed folder. It will end up in like a temp directory, so it doesn't clutter anything. Okay, I think we can wait for it. Are there any questions so far? I think that's going to be the most like on-demand stuff that we're going to look at. Okay, until then, we'll move on to the last bit of this, which is custom environments. So the reason we would use those is for isolation and version control. So you might have a project that wants like a specific version of pandas or NumPy, but you have like 2 projects and they want different versions of NumPy. Or you might have a library or a module installed that wants like a specific version of something else, right? And like those can conflict. And so if you isolate those environments and you say, well, this environment or this region, or when I run this code, I have like NumPy version 10 and this one has NumPy 11, that's how like you would manage working with multiple projects. And the other cool thing about them is that they're also reproducible. So if you pip freeze and you say, these are all the requirements that I use exactly, some like maybe TensorFlow or something might have round off errors, or they might change the way they compute some math, right? And if you want someone to have the exact same amount of time to run a piece of code and the exact same results, you would want them to use exactly what you used. And that's also way easier with a custom environment. On Hyak, there are 3 ways to do that. You can use a venv, which is just built into Python. You can use conda, which you have to install separately. We have pretty good documentation for that if you want to work on it. And then we also use containers. So for example, if you remember when we launched Jupyter, we chose a specific container to initialize. And so that's where you would like make the change for Jupyter, for example. I do have something really quick set up for everyone. So if you have conda, it's just 2 commands for you to set up like a Jupyter kernel. So basically, if I go back to where I was in Jupyter, I will close a few more. Oh, before that, this finished, so we can look at what was here. So we have output.txt, and if we click on it, I have just a few print statements, and we can see what that script was doing was 1, we allocated 4 for the end tasks. So I was talking about like this is how you parallelize, and then if you look at parallel demo, this is taking advantage of 4 processes to like square things. And we can see the processes running like in any order they feel like running. So like super simple parallelization to get these squares printed out. So as I was talking about, having kernels is the exact same thing as having like a custom environment. So I want to execute everything that happens in here, or everything I execute as a cell on this Jupyter notebook to be running on my specific custom environment. And so, for example, I might not have TensorFlow installed. And so the way I would do that and install a specific version would be to select a kernel and go into here. For most of you, you're going to have Python 3 and nothing else. If you hit this button up here in the corner next to the bug. And so I really quickly want to talk about how you can set up an environment here to have a kernel for Jupyter. And again, this is reproducible and like extends to more than just Jupyter. Okay, so for anyone who has conda, which I have conda, we can, actually I'll use the terminal. Basically what this is going to do for you, if you are not familiar, Python 3 venv is going to create a virtual environment. So basically like that custom environment I was talking about. Source venv bin activate is going to activate that virtual environment. So basically any command you run after running this is going to run within that virtual environment. And so once you're there and you pip install, that pip is also running on the custom environment, and it installs specifically for that custom environment. And so in this case, you can exclude no cache there if you want, but ipykernel is what we want to install. So that will help you set up kernels, and then we can run ipykernel with install and the parameters user and then a name. And so the second you do that, that will like create a few files that like Jupyter will understand and be able to read from, and suddenly you will have like, well, you'll go back to this page, and an environment will appear. If you're using conda, you can still use a venv, probably. I just don't know how exactly stacked environments work. And I also have found that in the case that you have conda and you're trying to use a venv, you could run into a few issues. So Generally, I would recommend stick to just one of the two, but you can always experiment. And then finally, I said there were 3 ways to get a custom environment. The last is a container. And this is what we recommend if you're trying to use maybe like the GPUs, if you're trying to run like tasks that you really, really, really want to be reproducible. This is the easiest way. So the way you're going to look for them is just like look up NVIDIA TensorFlow container or something. And it'll take you to a website like this, and it'll tell you everything that's installed, what you get out of it. Hit tags, and then copy the one. Like, you can't copy anything you feel like copying, unfortunately. You have to take the Linux AMD 64 one. So this is for NVIDIA specifically, but most container like archives are going to look like this and offer different architectures. So I've already copied this. This is 10 gigabytes. That's going to take a while to copy, so I didn't make you all do it. We don't use Docker. We use Apptainer. So if I want this, I would copy this nvcr.io, and I would do apptainer pull docker, as in the Docker format, // and then paste the URL. And that will let you copy it to our file system. Yeah, and then make sure to do this in the scrubbed folder and not the home directory, because this itself would take up the entire file, like all the space you have. So fortunately for me, I already have that thing installed, and so we can go back to the interactive session, hit custom, and then paste the path to wherever that is stored. And so for me, I have it in tflow and then that CIF. And a CIF is basically, it's a singularity image file, which is Apptainer used to be called Singularity. So it's like just a compatibility thing for that. But this is a good way to check if this is what you want it to use. And then we can just launch it the same way we launched any other one of these. Yeah, while we wait for this, just finishing off that container section, I launched this with my TensorFlow container. Which one is it? OK, cool. And so if I run these, I've already run them, but if I run them again, hopefully things will import like I'm expecting them to. This is like half an error. So just make sure you read this before using TensorFlow. So we can see my current active kernel is just Python 3. And then we have TensorFlow version 2.17, which is what that container promised me. We can see that a GPU is available because I'm on a GPU partition. So sometimes you'll be in a GPU partition, and if you're not using a container or if your environment is improperly set up, it's going to say 0. So that's annoying. You might think you're using a GPU, you're not. So just like be careful. And then we can see that all these commands that we would want to use to like evaluate if something is working are also available. If you're not familiar with that exclamation mark or the bang is just running something on the kernel instead of as a Python code block. And yeah, I think that finishes or like wraps up the custom environment session. So we've covered basically everything that you would want to use OnDemand for. I'm sure there's like a bunch of other use cases that we haven't considered yet. So if that is you, we have that available. And hopefully this was helpful in just like looking into specifically the apps that we have, but also how we can extend that into an app that you might be using, and just like experimenting with everything that's available through the platform. And yeah, if there's updates, I forgot to say this, but develop restart web server. That will give you the cleanest build, so that's like not cached. So something goes wrong, try that first, and then that will be good. Yeah, thank you for being here.
Another note is the NVIDIA containers, most of them, and they have many, TensorFlow, PyTorch, just regular Python, just CUDA, like they have a bunch of choices. They all include Jupyter Server installed, so you should be able to use them this way. We haven't gotten PyTorch working yet, but we're working on that. But I think that most of them should work just fine. They work for port forwarding too. And then I wanted to announce that I'm hosting office hours on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. on Zoom. So if you go to our website, to the blog, basically every month I repost when our office hours are being held. So you'll find a link to register for office hours. You just need to register one time, and that will send you the office hour link. And then on Thursdays, I go in person to the eScience Institute, which is on the 6th floor of the astronomy tower. And so I sit there and we can have an in-person office hour as well. And if I'm not available or if I'm traveling, then I usually have a substitute. So there'll be someone there at 2 p.m. on Thursdays, and then virtually 2 p.m. on Wednesdays.